Hey everybody, Jake here with Jake Wu Market Research to go over the broad market update going into the week ahead. Remember, if you do want more of a detailed weekend video, I do this for Twitter subscribers every other week, and I will be releasing a video this weekend as well for Twitter subscribers going over more of the daily and the weekly candle charts. This video is just going to go over the daily candle charts. And so remember, if you do want more of an in-depth video, check out my Twitter subscription. It's $10 a month. I'll put the link in the description. And if you have any questions, just let me know. Also, if you are trading futures and you haven't checked out Optimus Futures, this is a company that I've partnered with. So give them a follow on Twitter, as well as check out their website if you are interested in potentially another futures broker to check out. Now, going into the daily candle on ES, so we're looking at the S&P 500 futures. We had a pretty tough week. It's been a pretty tough week the last couple of weeks, but the main thing that I'm kind of focusing on here is the May 24th pivot VWAP. And you can see here that I also have a handoff VWAP. So essentially a handoff VWAP is when you have the last candle to test the original VWAP, or essentially the last candle to touch the original VWAP. This is something that was really created by Brian Shannon. I'm just a student of him, so this is something that I did learn from him using this handoff approach. You can see here that the handoff anchored VWAP held perfectly on Friday, and that's exactly where we got a bounce. You can see here on the Williams percent range, we do have this positive divergence where we have these lower lows on price, but we have higher lows on the Williams percent range, and even the Williams percent range ticking up today on Friday, even though we did have a red candle. So potentially we're getting close to a bounce spot here. At least for now, it would just be a potential short-term bounce spot, but I will go over targets and all of that more in the Twitter subscriber video that I'll post also this weekend in the subscription. But for now, definitely have some divergence to check out. Your main level here on the VWAP, the handoff VWAP, is right around 44.59. So definitely keep that in mind going into the week ahead. But also remember that these VWAPs do change as price and volume evolve. So we'll see what happens going into the week ahead. But definitely after a pretty big move down, we are seeing some signs that maybe, at least in the short term, we could be losing some momentum to the downside and exhausting to the downside. On the Qs, you have something pretty similar here. You do have this divergence still playing out here on the daily chart with lower lows on price, slightly higher lows here on the Williams percent range shown by this upward sloping pink line, and then the downward sloping pink line on the actual price chart. The main thing to keep an eye on here is this April 24th low VWAP zone, which ranges anywhere from around 14,658 all the way up to around 14,850. Now, you also have a gap that fills below at 14,526.75, so that would definitely also be an area to watch if we do get continuation down going into the week ahead. Remember, divergence is divergence until it's not anymore. So just because you have divergence does not mean you're guaranteed to get a bounce, but it is worth noting that, we could get at least a short-term bounce here with this divergence forming, and then your downside levels are what I mentioned below. Upside level, you could potentially get back to around 15,525, which would be simply just an SR flip, previous support becoming potential resistance above. Going into oil, crude oil is definitely starting to move up. We finally broke out of this previous resistance zone from 82.50 to 83.50. We closed above it on Wednesday, and then we pulled back and retested this area. It's exactly what you want to see with a breakout, essentially just an SR flip here, previous, in this case, resistance flipping to support. So in this case, oil does look pretty bullish here. We'll see if it holds above 82.50, and if it does, we could be on our way to test the November 2022 pivot from $89 to $90 above. So definitely something that could maybe get people a little nervous about inflation. If oil continues to move up, people may start to think that the Fed's going to continue to raise. So that may be why, with oil going up, it may be worth looking at potential more downside for the market. I do have a few trade ideas on the Twitter subscription video that I'll go over on the oil side of things, so definitely check that out, and we'll see if we can get this SR flip and a continuation up next week. Tesla has definitely been one that has been hit pretty hard. You can see here that we did have this anchored VWAP pinch. So an anchored VWAP pinch is essentially this area. It almost looks like the Bollinger Band's getting really tight, where you essentially have a swing low and a swing high VWAP. In this case, the swing low VWAP is your May 24th pivot that acted as support a couple times over the last week. And then your swing high pivot VWAP is essentially where we failed to really test this week at all. We broke down, retested this area, this May 24th pivot. So you can see here that with this arrow, you can see here that we did retest that breakdown point, failed to close above it, and then continued down on Friday with almost the gap filling. The gap fully fills at 235.23, so that's definitely the main area that I'm watching below. If we do get a move up, this previous support, this May 24th pivot VWAP, right around 251, could be potential resistance above if there is a bounce going into the week ahead. Apple has also gotten absolutely annihilated here. Literally out of the last 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, out of the last 9 days, we've had 8 of those days close red on the daily chart. In this case, you can see that the March 13th pivot VWAP zone is still holding here, which is also right in line with this gap that fills at 175.77. So this is definitely something to keep in mind. The gap below, many times gaps can act as at least short-term support zones. So we'll see if that occurs going into the week ahead. And you can see here as well, if you do turn on the Williams percent range, you can see that we are starting to get a little bit of this divergence forming here as well. So same thing, you can see that we're hitting lower lows here, closing at lower lows, yet the Williams percent range is oversold and is starting to close at these higher lows, which is showing divergence potentially getting in a point where it could play out, at least in the short term. So definitely keep an eye on that going into the week ahead. And I'll go over more details on this as well in the Twitter subscription with my written analysis into Sunday. NDVA is another one that is just not helping the market at all. You can see here that we are starting to lose some momentum with the Williams percent range becoming oversold. However, if you look at the MACD and the RSI, we're also just still really in free fall. However, you can see here that if we do look back, pretty much the last time that the Williams percent range, the RSI, and the MACD looked like this was a pretty long-term bottom in December of 2022. So we'll see here if this is potentially a bottom coming up. One thing I would note here is that gap does fill at 395.30, so that could definitely be an initial downside target to keep an eye on to see if price holds there. But overall, it definitely does look like the market is, especially names like NVIDIA, which were leading the market, are potentially starting to roll over here. But as I mentioned, the main area that you want to look for is the 395.30 gap below. And remember, you really have to take levels in increments, right? If price does not hold the 395.30, then we'll come up with a new target. But for now, the main level to watch below is 395.30. You can see here that we also are holding kind of this previous support zone that we had back in June of 2023. So if we do hold above this area, currently right the bottom of this zone is right around 404.50. If we break 404.50, then this gap below at 395.30 is definitely initiated as a target below. So we'll see what happens going into the week ahead, but overall not a great look with the June 7th pivot VWAP breaking down, price breaking down through it on Thursday and continuing down on Friday. So really some bearish action here. So that is all I have for the weekend update. Hopefully this was helpful. Remember, if you do want a more in-depth look at the markets, more on the weekly candle side as well, I am doing a Twitter subscriber video and going over not only SPY, QQQ, IWM, but also some of my favorite ideas going into the week ahead. And if you have any questions, just comment in the video comments section and I'm happy to answer them. And remember, this is not financial advice. This is just a look at the markets and hopefully giving you a different perspective than you may have seen. And as I mentioned, the subscription is simply just market research, looking at the markets and looking at identifying levels essentially that you may not have time to look for or may not have thought about, especially gaps. Gaps are generally my targets on a lot of these names that I go over in the subscription. So definitely something really created to help optimize and make the whole process of looking at the markets more efficient, especially for those that have full-time jobs and may not have time to do this on their own. Thank you so much for watching. Hopefully everybody has a great weekend, and we'll see you next time.